Karen pointed a handgun at my wife during a heated HOA confrontation outside today. Neighbors froze, phones lifted, as fear cut through the quiet cul-de-sac instantly. My wife stayed calm, hands visible, voice steady, despite obvious danger unfolding. Karen shouted violations, claiming authority, property rights, and imaginary enforcement powers loudly. Security cameras captured everything. Angles clear, audio sharp, time-stamped without mercy. Tide called emergency services, reporting an armed threat with precise location details. Dispatchers escalated immediately, instructing distance, safety, and continuous observation calmly. Police units arrived fast, sirens controlled, positioning carefully to avoid escalation. Karen panicked, weapon lowered slowly as commands echoed firmly around her. Officers detained her, secured the firearm, and separated witnesses efficiently. My wife identified herself professionally, credentials verified quietly on secure channels. Commanders arrived next, recognizing her role without theatrics or special treatment. Procedures followed protocols strictly. No favors, no shortcuts, no retaliation allowed. Statements were taken, footage copied, evidence logged methodically by investigators. Karen's bravado collapsed as charges were explained clearly and publicly. Aggravated assault became the charge, enhanced by firearm use and threats. A protective order issued immediately, barring contact with my family. HOA leadership released rushed statements distancing themselves from Karen's actions quickly. Insurance carriers were notified, risk exposure recalculated overnight. Prosecutors reviewed footage, expressions hardening at the unmistakable threat displayed. Bail conditions restricted weapons ownership pending trial outcomes. Karen's social posts vanished, replaced by silence and legal counsel updates. Neighbors testified, courage replacing fear as truth aligned across accounts. The case advanced rapidly, no delays tolerated given severity. Court hearings stayed procedural, calm, and focused on facts only. My wife continued work professionally, protected, respected, unshaken by intimidation attempts. Karen attempted excuses claiming stress, misunderstanding, authority, confusion, without success. Judges rejected minimization, emphasizing public safety and accountability strongly. HOA bylaws were examined, authority claims dismantled line by line. Civil suits followed, damages sought for trauma and harassment documented. Karen's firearm license was suspended pending final adjudication. Training failures within the HOA were exposed during depositions. Board members resigned quietly. Elections scheduled under oversight. Media coverage stayed factual, focusing on lawful resolution. My wife addressed concerns calmly, emphasizing restraint and process. Trial evidence played in court, silence heavy as footage rolled. The jury deliberated briefly, returning decisive guilty verdicts promptly. Sentencing considered deterrence, community impact, and firearm responsibility. Penalties imposed were firm, measured, and fully justified. Restitution ordered, counseling mandated, and probation strictly monitored. Civil judgments added financial consequences beyond criminal penalties. HOA insurance premiums skyrocketed. Lessons learned expensively. New leadership instituted training, transparency, and compliance reviews. Neighborhood meetings became calmer, grounded, and respectful again. Cameras remained installed, reminders of accountability and safety. My wife walked freely, confidence intact, fear gone. Karen sold her home later, reputation permanently damaged. Records remained public, a warning against entitlement with weapons. The system worked without spectacle, just process and evidence. Neighbors slept easier, knowing threats met consequences swiftly. Trust rebuilt slowly through predictable, lawful enforcement. Our family focused forward, stress replaced by gratitude. The incident became training material for de-escalation nationwide. Authority proved protective when restrained by law. Power lost its sting under sunlight. Fear lost ground to procedure. Cameras stayed impartial. Witnesses stayed brave. Law stayed boring. Safety stayed paramount. Karen stayed silent. The HOA stayed cautious. Boundaries stayed respected. Firearms stayed regulated. Threats stayed punished. Process stayed consistent. Justice stayed calm. Retaliation stayed absent. Accountability stayed firm. Authority stayed lawful. Titles stayed irrelevant during crimes. Evidence stayed decisive. Courts stayed steady. Community stayed united. My wife stayed protected. Our home stayed peaceful. Nights stayed quiet. Trust stayed rebuilding. Lessons stayed learned. Oversight stayed watchful. Prevention stayed possible. Courage stayed contagious. Entitlement stayed checked. Violence stayed unacceptable. Law stayed supreme. Safety stayed shared. Calm stayed restored. Fear stayed gone. Respect stayed earned. Justice stayed dull. That's ideal. No heroics required. No secrets abused. No lives harmed. Only consequences applied. Only process mattered. Only truth remained. Only lessons endured. Only safety won. And accountability stood guard permanently.